All right, so this show is absolutely free. What you can do to help me out, if you dig it, is give it a like, give it a subscribe, and leave a review wherever it is that you listen. So you listen on Spotify, just leave a little review there, Apple Podcasts, whatever. YouTube, you can give it stars or whatever. I think you can review it there too. I don't know. It's different for every platform, but we're on every platform. So share the show, give it a like, subscribe, and review. If you're not already subscribing to the YouTube channel, do me a favor. I got to boost that up. Go to youtube.com at The Big Truth Podcast and give us a subscribe over there. And yeah, I mean, that's all I'm asking. I appreciate it very much. And big shout out to all my Patreon subscribers. You guys are the inner circle of this show. And yeah, you guys rule. If you want to get down with the Patreon, just go to Big Truth. Go to patreon.com/Big Truth. And there's all different levels of patronage there. They all have their exclusive benefits. You get things like early access to shows, giveaways, and whatnot. Yeah, but check it out. We've got a good crew over there. Patreon.com/Big Truth. Check out my motorcycle shop, Chopperhead Custom Cycles, located in Freetown, Massachusetts, 13 County Road, East Freetown, Massachusetts. Give us a call, 508-995-6764 if you need something. Whatever it is, motorcycle related. You need riding, apparel, gear, shop swag, parts. We are a full brick and mortar motorcycle shop. So that means you come in, we got a showroom, we got a parts counter. We got a little area with all the apparel and riding gear, helmets, gloves, T-shirts, hoodies, sweatshirts, whatever. But then in the back, it is an old school motorcycle shop. So we work on any year Harley. We work on a little bit of Triumph stuff, modern stuff, a little bit of early stuff. And yeah, I'm chewing gum. I got to get rid of it. Very unprofessional. All right. But yeah, so give us a call or give us a shout out at chopperhead.com, www.choppahead.com. Now, in this world where so many businesses are online only and, drop shipping from warehouses, it's good to have a shop that you can come into. And it's not just like, you buy a part on Amazon, then you got no one to put it on. And if you don't have the technical know-how, you go into a shop with a part you bought on Amazon, chances are they ain't going to take kindly to that. So come on in. And we'll hook you up. We give you better pricing, and we anything you need. Whether you need stereo work done, you need performance work done, you need general service and maintenance, you need tires, whatever it is. You need a full custom chopper built from the ground up. We can handle it. We do it all. You used to see our bikes all over the place when magazines were still a thing, on the cover of many magazines. We've been in the game for a long time. So again, 13 County Road, East Freetown, Massachusetts. It's a central location. You could walk in. We're open every day except Sunday. December and January and February, we might close on Mondays too, but whatever. You just give us a call, 508-995-6764. If you see something you need, or if there's something you need and you don't see it on the website, give us a shout. We can get it for you. We're hooked up with every parts manufacturer. All right. If you need some artwork, then what you need to do is head over to tattooflashcollective.com. And no matter what it is, obviously they sell Tattoo Flash, but they sell art from tattoo artists all across the world. So, it's not just Tattoo Flash. It can be anything from a postcard to a full-size poster, books, all kinds of stuff. Go to tattooflashcollective.com. Use the promo code BIGTRUTH at checkout. You get 10% off your order. If you are a Patreon subscriber, you get even more off your order, but you got to be a Patreon subscriber to get that code. So membership, again, has its privileges. And, if you want more information on the podcast, just go to bigtruthpodcast.com. I invite you to hit the store button and get some shop swag. We got some cool designs. I got even more coming. But yeah, you can check it out. And there's all kinds of merchandise there. It's run by fulfilled by a merchandising company, so they handle it all. Whether you need an iPhone case, a banner like I have in the background, or T-shirt, hoodie, all the normal stuff, they got it. BigTruthPodcast.com. So without further ado, this one's going to be a wild one. I've been looking forward to having Nathaniel on for a long time, and we're getting it going tonight. So open up your mind, be prepared to absorb some information, and keep it locked.
Five, four, three, two, one. We have a liftoff.
Yes, once again, we have liftoff. I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Big Truth Podcast. And I'm very excited to have my man Nathaniel Gillis here with me today, who's a researcher, an author, a scholar, a gentleman, a lecturer. And he's going to take you down this path that leads from demonology to necronetics. And so without further ado, Nathaniel, how you doing, buddy?
Doing very well today. Doing very well. I had a scare last night, a medical emergency, but I'm thankful to be here with you, and I'm excited. Thank you for the opportunity to have me on. It's not a light thing. I do not take it for granted.
No, and I don't take it for granted that you're here. It shows your commitment to your research. I mean, you had a good health scare yesterday. So thank you for doing this today. I mean, and like I said, I offered to reschedule, and you're like, nope, let's do it. This research has got to get out there. So that shows commitment and fortitude, man. So I got nothing but respect. So appreciate that. But for people that might not be familiar with you and the work that you do, why don't you kind of give everyone a little overview and background? And I would like to hear how you even got into this realm of research, because it's not a common thing, and like your thoughts and research have brought you down a line of inquiry that has brought a unique perspective, and you're bringing a unique perspective to this world, in this realm of research, and it's very important. So I love having the opportunity to have you on and to flesh that out and chop it up a little bit with you.
Yes, again, thank you for having me on. So, for those who are new to me, as you have already deduced, I am Nathaniel Gillis. My origin story is as follows. I grew up in a haunted house. That was my very first introduction to this phenomenon. Matter of fact, I can remember when my father told me, I was 8 years old, but he told me when he got home from work, Nathaniel, we've decided to move as a family. We're moving across town. We're going to go look at a house here at about 7:30. So sure enough, we looked at this house, and it was completely vacant, obviously. And I remember my dad leading me into my room, which would become my room, future. He said, take a look around, figure out where you're going to put everything. We're pretty sure we're going to make an offer. Get used to this building, get used to this home. And I can still remember once I passed the threshold into the room, from the hallway into the room, I just remember feeling this intense energy of feeling watched,
Mm.
like something was in the room with me. I was not alone.
How old were you
And
again?
8 years old.
Eight. Okay. Yep.
Yep, 8 years old, playing my Game Boy Color and big into, I think it was Life with Louie. I loved Life with Louie back in the day. I'm a 90s kid.
Yep.
But that's irrelevant at this point. So, yeah, and there I am in the room, and I'm looking around. I just felt this immense presence watching me as I'm checking out the room itself. And I remember that. I remember the pervasive presence of this stench. It was kind of a gritty stench. It smelled like rotting or decomposing organic matter.
Hmm.
So both of those combined, I knew I felt something. I knew something was present. I just didn't know what it was.
Were
And
you the
so
only one perceiving the stench, or did your parents
I
smell
was
it
the
too?
only one there in the room. They
Okay.
they never they never looked at it. And I mean,
Okay.
after that initial event, I went to the living room with them and the realtor. They made the offer. Then we left.
Mm.
But later on, they experienced some paranormal activity in the home. But as it was, I'm there looking in the room, just checking things out and mentally trying to figure out where I'm going to put my gaming system, my chest drawers, the closet, just kind of navigating my way through this room. For some reason, I was compelled to get on my hands and knees and look underneath the bed. And I'm a kid, so there I was. And
Yeah.
to my utter astonishment, I pulled the blanket up and looked underneath it, and there appeared to be, and I use that intentionally, appeared to be a full-bodied apparition of a little girl. She was pale in complexion. She had long black hair was wearing a white linen dress that looked to have been made during the turn of the century. I initially thought that she belonged to a family in the neighborhood. Why wouldn't I think that? Right? That's Occam's razor at that point. And so I remember getting back into the car on the way home at night, falling asleep. But then when I woke up, I'm like, guys, we got to talk. There's a girl around my age that lives around here, and I found her underneath the bed. She was hiding from us. It wasn't until after we moved into the home that I got to know all the neighbors. And again, I lived there for about 5 to 6 years after that.
Mm.
I knew all the neighbors, and then I realized at a certain point, oh my gosh, uh, that girl does not belong here. She doesn't belong to any family in that area in the cul-de-sac and on the other streets next to it. That's when things started to move in my mind. Okay, what was that Saul? Not who was it? What was it?
Mm.
And so once we moved into the home, I realized that there was something paranormal going on because number one, I never saw that little girl again, ever. But I did witness shadow figures, orbs, an entity displacing its weight in the living room. We had a wooden floor. So just imagine being 8.5 years old in the pregnant silence of 3 a.m. You hear something displacing its weight,
Mm.
moving, walking all the way up to your room, and then you feel it enter. And then it's like, oh my God, what is this? I can't see it, but I can feel it. So that's when I realized that there's something profoundly wrong about this environment.
Mm.
It's at that point that the phenomenon would induce me, again, between the ages of 8 to about 14, 15. It would induce me into dreamlike states. I would go into looping nightmares, and I won't get you demonetized, but really bad things happen to people in these nightmares where they hurt themselves. It was really awful.
Yeah.
But you would start it out, it was always black and white, in black and white. And from the beginning to the end, you would think, okay, now it's gonna end. I'm gonna wake up, I'm gonna get ready for school. And then just when I would think I was gonna wake up, it would start over again
Ooh.
from the beginning. And I'm thinking there's something really wrong about this picture here. So I was at the point in my life, even as a young guy, young man, rather, 8, 9 years old, a kid, not even a
Yeah.
young man, a kid, that I realized number one, there is something out there. There is an intelligence that was victimizing me. And from the ages of 15 to about 22, I debated whether or not I even wanted to pursue this kind of research. Number one, I didn't want to be crazy. I knew I was not insane. And I wanted to know if other people had experienced that phenomena as well. And sure enough, they have. And so I made a conscious decision about 21 or 22 to pursue this field, to dive headfirst into the literature and do my own investigations and hopefully get answers.
Mm.
And if not the right answers, maybe I would inherit the right questions. And so that's what got me into the field, and that's pretty much my origin story.
Yeah. And did that entity or that presence, did that only target you, or did other people in your house experience anything, or were they just like, hey, you had a bad dream, and they were just kind of dismissing it? Or
70/30. 70% of the time it was you had a bad dream,
yeah.
because, and I'm not ashamed to admit this, I'm talking about being 13 years old and just feeling this presence in my room, pulling my mattress off the bed,
Mm.
sneaking into my parents' room, hoping to get sleep. Because what would happen is I would be afraid to go to sleep,
Yeah, sure.
fearing that I would be induced to do one of those nightmares. And so I would stay up all night with the lights on. And then I think it was about maybe 7:45 in the morning. My mother would wake up. She would get in the shower, and I'd hear the whole house is up and it's alive now. And then I would feel comfortable enough to look outside at the sun's risen. I would capture about maybe 45 minutes of sleep, go to school, which, by the way, I don't recommend anybody do that.
Yeah,
Not a
yeah.
successful strategy,
Yeah, sure.
but it's one that I had to deploy. And there I was at school crashing, literally just falling asleep on my desk. It was a very, very, very difficult time for me, but I think it created some kind of immunity because now that I'm doing investigations, it doesn't really traumatize me anymore. Some
Sure.
of these hauntings I've been involved in. But dealing with the phenomenology behind what I experienced, I came to the conclusion that these various manifestations were not independent entities in and of themselves. They were not separate phenomena.
Yeah.
I realized very early on that whatever I was dealing with was masquerading as these various entities. In other words, the same apparition or entity that was performing the apparitional manifestation, the same entity that was the apparition was also the same entity that was creating disembodied conversations above my head at night.
Mm.
That's the same entity, the same intelligence.
Yeah.
And so that's when I realized, yeah, that that was monumental in shaping my theory regarding this phenomenon. So for those who are interested in that, I am a proponent of what's called the unified field theory. It's controversial, I admit that, but I am of the opinion that what we're dealing with is a singular intelligence masquerading as various phenomena in order to diversify its identity in our eyes. So that would mean that in many cases, the same apparition, the same intelligence that's creating the apparition, is in many cases creating the UAPs we're seeing in ufology. So that's my, I guess, my position as it stands today.
Sure. And what do you think the purpose is of, presenting itself to different people in different, in different forms? Like whether some people are,
Yeah.
oh, I saw this, I saw a UFO, and some people like, I saw a demon or I saw a ghost. And,
Yeah.
if it's the same, intelligence, what do you think the game is with that? Like, why is it presenting itself in different forms to different people? Is it just part of the game to keep you
Yeah.
not knowing what it really is, or
I believe that plays a major role in it. Now, there is a measure of human condition present in this phenomenon. It's like Ray Hernandez, the author of Beyond UFOs, and I think it's a New Reality, two different books. But him and his wife both witnessed an entity. He believed it to be an alien, extraterrestrial entity. He believed it to be a demon. So some of this does come down to human perception and human worldview. Now, there's also a secondary manifestation here that has to be discussed. Number one, we have cases where a family, let's say a family of five, will be on a highway. This is one of Dr. Carla Turner's cases. And a UAP will manifest above the car. And there will be like five or six different cars on the highway that stop. Everybody else just drove on by because they never saw anything.
Mm,
And so when Dr. Turner interviewed this particular family of witnesses, none of them could agree on what they saw. They knew something was present, and it was, but none of them could agree on the shape of the craft, the number of lights on it, and the colors of the lights in it. That's when I realized that, hey, there's something really wrong with us, because if that was a structured craft, they would have all agreed on what it appeared to be. You take that case study and combine it with some of Dr. Gary Nolan's latest research. I mean, he had a case study in France where a young boy was inside of a vehicle. He's looking through the sunroof at a UAP, a craft, and he's describing it as this massive body. It's huge. It's blacking out the sun and all this wild stuff. And his mother looks up, and what she sees is completely different. And so she whips out her iPhone, snaps a picture of it. And instead of it being what the young boy described, it was completely different. It was just a small star-shaped metallic object.
mm,
And so my point here is that we can no longer trust what we see in the field. Now, moving deeper into this aspect of the phenomenon, I do believe, and my colleagues do as well, that the phenomenon is weaponizing what's called the observer effect. What that means is that when we lock onto it, we make a conscious connection of it and with it. The phenomenon will collapse itself into something in our presence. And in many cases, what it's collapsing itself into is not at all what it is. And so, what this means in phenomenology is that if you and I were in a haunted house and we are observing, again, observing with our eyes, our consciousness, we observe an apparition of a lady in white. This is documented. What's happening now is when we observe it with our eyes, we'll go back to the camera, and the apparition will not be on camera. What we will capture is a ball of light. And so there is a direct relation. There is a connective tissue between the apparition and the ball of light that's floating behind it. That means in the field that now we can suggest with quite a lot of confidence that there's evidence here to say that a lot of these apparitions are physiological constructs. The phenomenon is manifesting in our presence. They are not real. What's real is what we're capturing on camera.
So it's almost like, when people see orbs, that might be the actual thing, and then it projects out of image
Project
of whatever it
something.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's why, again, what we observe is not what's actually present.
Mm.
And we're again, I just now for those who are wondering, I just connected that to ufology as well, not just hauntology. It's the same mechanism being weaponized against our species. So that's why when people corner me with Nathaniel, just articulate what do you believe we're dealing with? I come to the point where I say, look, I no longer believe in any of the form because it's deceiving, it's deceitful.
Yeah.
I'm looking at function. And so dealing with that aspect of the phenomenon, it's important to understand that mechanism is not just being weaponized in hauntology, it's in ufology. Even in Skywatcher, the Skywatcher movement right now in the field, who are actively trying to, quote, summon these objects.
The CE5 type of situation.
The absolutely, yes, sir. What they're realizing as well, and I remember watching an interview with one of their biggest researchers, who he said we're having a problem understanding what we're observing. That's a what. When we're observing it,
Mm.
the when. And so between the what and when, there is a weaponization of the phenomenon that says, I'm going to control your perception of me. You're going to go home and you're going to write books, have conferences, and sell t-shirts about ghosts, when truthfully, that's a physiological construct I created. And so in a way, again, it's diversified its identity in our eyes. Now, why is it doing that? Well, some of that, again, is due to the human condition. Most of it, though, is the phenomenon's desire to evolve. And once we start to realize what's going on, it'll update itself like a learning matrix. It'll evolve once more to where today we're calling them ET, extraterrestrial, interdimensional. Even Aleister Crowley said in his research, yeah, today they're called demons.
Mm.
Tomorrow they're called extraterrestrials. And so we're looking at my colleagues and I, what we're looking at is the evolutionary process of this intelligence, knowing that it has the ability to create aliases throughout all the field. And so what we're looking at now is the function. How is it functioning? Not how it's forming. It's using the form to deceive our species, but what is its function? And so my conclusion today is that what we're dealing with is in fact a life form. It exists. There is something out there. It's not just mind control. It's not a psyop. It's not just a physiological construct or a human construct. Something is out there. And in many cases, the only time we're witnessing it is when it glitches in our presence. It's the black cat in the matrix,
Mm.
where we as researchers and experiencers did not realize the paranormal was present until it messes up. And then we capture evidence to say, okay, what is actually going on here?
Yeah. So the w- I know I asked this earlier, but and what do you think the reason is? Why is it trying to
Yeah,
mask itself? Is it like is it just trying to stay? Is that its way of being camouflaged so we don't really acknowledge its existence or like get at where it's at? Or like, do you think there's
absolutely. It evolves according to our awareness of it, and it
yeah?
evolves in order to evade.
So that's why like
This
there's
is,
cases where like there was a kid once where like it presented itself as a cartoon character
yeah,
and
yeah.
then later in life it
And
came
I've had
back as the
cases like
cartoon
that.
character and the kid's like that can't be real, but
Yeah,
when it
that's
was
one of my,
that's
I
one
don't
of
know whose
yours.
case that is. I've had, yeah, yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
absolutely, brother. Yeah, I was like,
Yeah.
that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's in those moments when you see the mechanisms of the phenomenon. How does it respond when interfacing with us? Again, when this individual, this female, this woman, when she told me this story, she was very worried that I wouldn't believe her. But knowing me, I'm kind of an oddball myself. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of fits. Well, for those who don't know what our friend here is talking about, it's an amazing case, guys. This is an individual that reached out to me, and she said that she had been abducted as a child, And that when they first manifested to her in her room, they manifested as her favorite cartoon characters. Now, here's a question. Because it manifested as a cartoon character, does that mean the cartoon character really exists? Because that's the logic we have been using in the field.
Mm.
It manifested as that, right? Therefore, it must be that. Well, what happened was they took her, they ran experiments. A lot of it was gynecological. Well, they left her alone for a few years. And during that time, she went into puberty and she hit a growth spurt. She no longer watched those cartoons, no longer read those comic books. And because the phenomenon uses programs, it manifested to her years later as that cartoon character. The only problem is now it's this tall, she's this tall.
Yeah.
And she's thinking in her mind, it's impossible. And this is what we should be thinking as well. It's impossible that you're my favorite cartoon character because that cartoon character does not exist. You realize I'm being manipulated by something. And it was at that moment that the phenomenon realized, oh my God, she doesn't believe in the image I'm manifesting. And for some reason, this is something my colleagues and I are really, really researching right now. Is for some reason, the belief in the image affected the phenomenon.
Mm.
And when she disbelieved, when she said, I'm not going to follow this program, I do not believe in you. This entity, and this is her words, not mine, the entity's eyes got very big. It went from about this very big, and they began to move robotically. And she said, Nathaniel, the only way I could explain it was measuring my belief in the image it was manifesting as.
Mm.
And so this is, I want to take a side note and let everybody know that believing in the image it manifests as empowers the entity wearing that manifestation. And so somewhere in between the first time it manifests in maybe 25, 30 seconds, we as a species have to have the ability to test that spirit to say, okay, are you who you want me to believe you are? Or is there something wrong here? Are you wearing a mask? Are you manifesting as something you found in the corridors of my imagination? That's the time frame we have to fight back. But my point here, though, for everybody, is that it was relying on a learning matrix.
Yeah.
It had to go through the archetypes and then don this mask, this costume. And if she didn't believe in it, it really messed with the phenomenon. And I find that fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. The one question I did have, and as we talk about the phenomenon and as it exists, and in your theory,
Mhm.
do you also? This is just a question I've always wanted. When I've heard you on other shows, I wanted to ask: do you think that these other things do exist too? Like, do you think there is a possibility that there are extraterrestrials out there or other interdimensional beings, but that
Mhm.
exist outside of the phenomenon that you're talking about, or do you think everything is just that? Do you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I don't want to. I think it would be very ignorant of me if I said, okay, yeah, there's no extraterrestrials in the
Yeah,
entire
sure,
universe.
sure, yeah, yeah.
You know, I just don't think that's what we're dealing with at all.
Here at all, yeah.
Um,
Okay.
at all. I do believe that whatever we're dealing with here is weaponizing these manifestations, weaponize even in cryptozoology. We're seeing the same mechanism being employed. I have a friend in England, Paul Sinclair, huge in cryptozoology. He has a book called, it's a series called Wolf Lands. It shows truth proof. But he's had cases in Benton where people are just driving on the road and this cryptid starts walking up to them. They're freaking out. They're losing their minds. They're punching it, they're flooring it, and it's keeping pace,
Mm,
but it's barely moving. Why? That's a glitch. It's a glitch. It's not real. Something else is there that does exist.
yeah,
But what the phenomenon does is it uses these archetypes to be present with us, but absent from us. What's present with us as a species is the mask. What's
sure.
absent from us, right? The form. What's absent from us is the function, and that's the most germane research being done right now.
Did was it you that was talking about also just like general physical objects that it can manifest as, like
Absolutely.
like a fork or something that was never there before, or
Yeah.
some piece of furniture in the house? Was that you that was talking about that?
Yeah, so these are commonly known as apports.
Yeah.
And again, this is one of those things that just traverses various fields. At first, the first blush, I discovered that phenomenon in demonology, like the most diabolical possession cases included the presence of apports. Now, an apport, for those who don't know, because I was there once, I didn't know either, is when the phenomenon literally, it's not allegory, it's not a metaphor. It literally materializes a foreign object into our environment.
Yeah.
And that's happened the first. I discovered that again in demonology, where during the exorcism, the phenomenon within the cavity of the demoniac will materialize physical objects small enough to go through the throat and to vacate the demoniac. They're collected by the Vatican and many other exorcists and different traditions. But number one, that's a mechanism weaponized by the phenomenon. Now, we need to understand the context here. When there's a war going on, I guess, one way to put it, or if the phenomenon is not wanting to vacate the premises, it will replicate an object, attach itself to that object, and plant it in its environment.
Okay. So it's
Right.
almost like an anchor point, or like an anchor.
Yes. My dear friend Steve Mera, a colleague of mine, calls it a quantum anchor, to where when the phenomenon, again, it doesn't want to vacate the premises, it doesn't want to leave, it doesn't want to be exorcised, if you will. It will replicate by apportation an object and attach itself to that object. And then that is when you see the process of it being regurgitated by the demoniac.
Mm.
Now, the priests, again, this is in demonology and it's framed through that worldview, but the priests know this as occult objects, to where they would actually, the Vatican will take them, bless them, and it will place them in a storage space, away from the general public. Why? Because they believe, and they're right, that the phenomenon materialized them so that it could anchor itself to them.
Mm.
Now, that's again in demonology. Now, because we're dealing with the same intelligence, it's weaponizing the same mechanism. In hauntology, we also have ports, and again, this gets back into Barry Fitzgerald, Steve Mayer's research, where they've had cases where the phenomenon will just take things from homes, and the family's wondering for months, where did it go? I've looked for this everywhere. I guess we're just going to chalk it up to an accident. Maybe somebody came here and stole it. We don't know. And then one day, out of nowhere, it will appear in the location that they checked over and over. It gets just right in front of everybody. Here it is. And so,
The scary thing about that is I think everybody's had that experience. I don't know anyone that,
oh
that
my,
hasn't
yeah,
had that.
yeah.
You know what I mean?
We wouldn't know. We wouldn't know. And,
Yeah.
and here's also another problem that we're having is that once Stephen Barry caught on to what the phenomenon was doing, they had numerous cases like this, but there was one particular case study where a family had purchased a group of coffee mugs together, the same box. They were made by the same manufacturer. Everything was the same. And the phenomenon took one of them and left the rest in the home. And they're like, where's the fourth one? And just like all the other case studies, months go by, out of nowhere, they wake up in the morning, go into the kitchen, it's on the counter. But I've always been here.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
glitch. No, you haven't. Right. And so, as it was, Steve takes that report, he runs it through various tests and at a laboratory. And he came to the conclusion, this is fascinating, through these tests, that the isotopic ratio of the cup that they manifested was different than that of the cups it came with in the box. And so the question arose, and this is primarily where we are with this, is that the cup that was taken and replaced, is the replacement real?
Mm.
That's where we are, guys. I apologize, but that's where we are with this.
Yeah.
Is that the original cup that was taken, or
And something
is the
changed.
iso?
Is that the
Yes,
original cup and
right.
something changed somewhere
Yeah, the
along the way?
change. Right. Or right. So there's two possibilities.
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards, and I know others are as well that I've talked to, that it wasn't the original cup. The phenomenon had replicated, again, a replica,
Mm.
created that in its own environment. That's why the isotopic ratio is different. And it's not, again, it's not creating its own matter from the atomic level. It's manipulating it
Yeah.
to where, yeah, the isotopic ratio is off. Why? Because it's not the same one. It's from that dimension, from them. Now, the problem is, my friend, if we held it in our hands and drank coffee with it, we would never know the difference. So, to your point, and it's a brilliant point, that we only know that because we had the ability, Stephen Barry had the ability to bench test it against the real. So, guess what the phenomenon started doing? Making sure that what it was taking and replacing, that they in and of themselves were one of one,
Mm.
to where you and I do not have the ability to measure the glitch in the matrix by bench testing it against the real.
Yeah. So it's
So that's the
the
evolution that we're
evolution. Yeah.
dealing
Yeah.
with.
Yeah. So
It catches up.
does it feel like it's the evolution is increasing, but as you like
Yeah.
before people were aware of it for what it was, like you know, with your theory, you know, and people were thinking things were ghosts or UFOs or, you know,
Mhm.
cryptids or whatever. Are you finding that it has to evolve faster now, that people are becoming aware that can someone be like, I don't think you're what you're
Yeah.
saying, you know what I mean? And you know,
Well, there's many ways the phenomenon controls this kind of data. Jacques Vallée was one of the earliest, probably the earliest researcher that mentioned the control system employed by the phenomenon. Um, yeah, I mean, it evolves pretty quickly,
sure.
and it does not want this kind of content to get out. I mean, look what happened last night. It's just instantly. Nothing's wrong with you, Nathaniel, but thankfully your aorta has not exploded.
Yeah. Yeah. It was at a
So
level where
it
it should have or could have, but it did not. Yeah.
Oh man, they scared me to death. Yeah, people have fallen dead in here with that. I'm like, oh no. And I didn't really. I mean, I was only irritable. That was it. I had no chest pain. I mean, I did have a lot of actually, but I remember that. But yeah, I didn't have like the other symptoms that went with it,
Yeah.
like the headache, a short of breath, stuff. But anyways, my point being that we only know of those cases because there was enough of a glitch for us researchers to be there soon enough and close enough to say this doesn't make sense. In the Matrix, that black cat should not be there over and over again. And so, within the learning matrix built into this phenomenon, we do have the ability to catch on. The problem is, to your point and to your question, is that my colleagues and I have to do enough research to get a glimpse of it, to see through the veil. And then what we do is we take what we have and what we know, and we release a little bit to the public, and then we just hide because we don't want to trigger that kind of response on the part of the phenomenon. And so it's kind of riding the knife's edge,
Mm.
really, of getting what we can when we can, knowing when to back off. But my point is, we only know of that. I got to stress this even more. We only know of these glitches because we were there. And that means, again, that possibly, let me phrase that better. There are possibly thousands upon thousands of parts in homes the phenomenon is anchored to, and they have no idea it's even there. And that's a problem for me.
Now, do you think those? What do you think is the purpose of those anchor points? So they can get back, so they can get there quickly, or is it something
Mhm.
like can they observe
The anchor
through?
itself.
Can they observe through those? You know what I mean?
Well,
Like is it
I'm
like
going
a,
to suggest,
is it like a fucking interdimensional Alexa or something? You know what I mean? Where it's like they can
yeah,
listen in
well, it
and
is.
see. You know?
I think it goes deeper and darker than that,
Sure.
unfortunately, because, again, from my perspective, when you see it from this lens, it starts to make sense as to why these mechanisms are witnessed in various fields. Same thing, just different cultural costume, same mechanism.
Yeah.
Well, my point here is that in ufology, we have these things called implants where they are documented.
Yep.
They're real. They're not a construct, right? They're actually existing. But they're underneath the skin. And the problem is that we don't know how they got there. Not just that, like when you go and you look at some of these people, there is no kind of dermal anomalies or even subdermal. It's just there. You see it.
Mm.
We don't know how it got in there. It's almost like it just appeared in the body.
Aren't there
And
cases
I
too where
think
it just
that's what we're dealing with.
aren't there cases too where it's like if someone's going to get it removed, all of a sudden it's spontaneously gone before, even though
It's alive.
it
Yes.
shows up on an X-ray, then they go to get it out and it's gone
Yep.
before they get to they make the cut.
Absolutely. So I believe it's the same mechanism.
Yeah.
And Steve and I have been kind of touching that during touching on that rather in our NHI, say that 10 times, in our NHI sessions, which is on his YouTube channel. My point here is that, yes, I do believe they're reporting these objects to people's bodies. There's no other skin anomalies. I mean, everything's there. It's not like there's surgery, there's no scratches, there's no bruising. It's just showing up. Now, to your point, the same intelligence that's anchoring itself to ports and homes is the same intelligence that's anchoring itself into the implants and bodies. And again, if the purpose is to monitor the environment, we also see that in the implantation of these devices in skin. There's one case behind me in a book called Beyond UFOs, where a young man who he was abducted, he was an experiencer, but his testimony was frightening. He said because before his abductions, he would feel his implant turn on.
Hmm.
And he said, in one night, he felt the presence in his room, and he knew, okay, I'm preparing myself to be taken here. Unfortunately, why are we doing that? By the way, we as a species, we have to prepare to be taken. I hate it; it's ridiculous. But here he is, nonetheless. And he said that once this implant turned on, he is seeing through their eyes as they're approaching his home.
Hmm.
And the question was, why are they seeing through his eyes? Because they turned the device on, number one. Number two, if they're seeing through his eyes, who's seeing through theirs? He is. And so there's this connection of consciousness that it had created, a unified stream of consciousness, where now they're looking through his eyes, he's looking through their eyes, and they have him. And so you see that same kind of anchoring present.
Yeah, and so the next kind of like beyond that, you had mentioned possession earlier. Where does possession feel, factor into this? Like, do you think it's these things actually entering somebody and possessing them, or like, because I know especially in demonology, you've done a lot of work with that. How do you think that factors into all of this?
Again, this gets back into necronetics. I believe that possession to us is pregnancy to them.
Mm.
And hybridism, long before it was hijacked by ufology, it wasn't the splicing of DNA, it wasn't me becoming a star seed or somebody. It was literally a parasitic presence replicating its own species by implanting itself into our bodies, where we as humans become biological avatars or parasite. And so we know that because in these cases of possession, we also have pregnancy involved. Why is that the case? And this gets back into some of the incubi literature I've done, or research I've done rather, throughout the field, where for those that kind of break this down, so an incubus entity in demonology is an entity, a spirit, okay, that appears to a woman in the image of a man and copulates with her. I have an issue with that model because true incubi cases include the presence of secretions, and a spirit does not have the ability to inseminate a woman to full-blown pregnancy. It doesn't make sense because it shouldn't.
Mm.
This is some of the theories in early demonology. Now, accompanying these secretions in incubi cases are sigils. Spirits don't leave sigils. That is a practitioner. That's why it has secretions, because it has a body. And so one of the leading researchers was a guy named Father Sinister Amino, and he's dealing with these incubi cases. And he too came to that conclusion. He said, because look, if it has secretions. It has corporeality. It has a body. And so when you look at these cases through that lens, it's more along the lines of a species of occultists who we confused with horns and hooves and demonic. They were a species on the earth that are embodied. In the way that they replicate their own kind is through impregnation and implantation. The impregnation comes from the insemination. The implantation of consciousness comes from the sigilization, the carving of sigils into the flesh of the victim. Now, the latest research I'm doing now is combining Austin Osman Sparr's sigilization, he coined the term, with Peter Carroll's chaos magic, to where what we're looking at is a species, again, that in order to project their consciousness into the fetus they're inseminating them with, they have to carve their sigils into the host body, which would be the female victim. Darkest research I'm doing, mind you, I'm aware of that. Very dark, very dark.
Sure, yeah,
but that is a species of practitioners, and I believe they're on the earth today. But to kind of expound on that, if I may, that is a field I've created called necronetics.
Now,
it deals with all of that.
Now, them being on Earth today through that process that you just outlined, the baby that is born, that is it part human or is it all that just in a human shell?
That's a good question. So we're either dealing with an unquantified species. That is to say, something that we have confused for demonic. It may not be demonic. It may be something different. It may be, again, a species of practitioners, yet unquantified by the field. Or we are dealing with, and this is where I'm kind of in the corner of, that there is this human and entity partnership that's being used, to where the practitioner is either replicating himself, his consciousness, in the new fetus, which I have the ritual for, and includes everything we've talked about, by the way, in necronetics. It's fascinating. Or what it's doing is willingly the practitioner is creating a fetus for the entity possessing him to move into and to inhabit. That is very possible, very probable, even according to the data, because again, that would be the model that would explain what we're seeing the most, I should say. That would validate, verify why we're seeing sigilization present and secretions. It's because that is a human body. But that's and that's where I'm at with it. And that's a whole nother show. That's too deep to get into at this point.
Yeah. Now, I mean, it sounds reminiscent of when you hear things of like Nephilim and Seed Wars.
Yeah, that's pretty much where we're at.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
No, it's crazy.
That's dark enough, bud. That's dark enough. Yeah.
Well, here's the problem. I mean, people like to push me in the corner. I say to Nathaniel, commit to what they are. Just say the magic word.
Yeah.
No, because what we're dealing with, again, if we're dealing with an intelligence that can literally replicate reality, then we're moving outside of the framework of just unclean spirits. We're dealing with something that's more evolved. And that's when you start to realize, like, you talk to people like that, you see that their knowledge of demonology is not there enough to even articulate, even have the conversation.
Yeah.
I got to lead them into the literature, pull them into case studies, and then have a conversation in the hope that the data speaks more than a dogma. Now, here's the issue, though, that whatever we're dealing with in ufology is absolutely what we've dealt with in demonology. I believe that 100%. Matter of fact, I've had conversations with occultists who know that to be true, who know it to be true. And I'm to the point now where I'm beyond that. I'm like, okay, yeah, but what is that out there exactly?
Yeah.
Right? Or are we just using placeholders and monikers, a description as a definition? And I do believe that's what we're doing.
Sure. Yeah. And, like you said, and if everything's evolving, you know,
Mhm.
and I'm not coming from any religious standpoint. I'm just coming from just things I've heard from people, or research I've done, or things I follow. Like, could that, in the biblical sense, where you see things Nephilim seed war, could that just be early iterations of this thing? And it's
Absolutely.
just this is just it's been with us this long, and that's how it was
Mhm.
presented then, and now it's presented as Fred Flintstone. You know what I mean? Like, or whatever,
There we go.
whatever it is.
Cartoon character.
Yeah,
Exactly. Exactly. And this is why, like, if we do our research purely based on form, we've lost it.
yeah, yeah,
We've lost it. That's why we, again, I am beating a dead horse here, but we have to look at function.
yeah,
And that's when you get into the mechanics of the phenomenon. And the only way, by the way, we can say, okay, these are not separate
yeah.
incarnations.
Sure.
These are just emanations, expressions, right? Many voices of one voice actor.
Yeah.
And we only know that based upon the mechanics of the phenomenon.
Now, to go beyond function, what do you think? You know, so there's the form, there's the function. What do you think?
Mhm.
What is the motives? What's the end game? What is it doing? Is it just observing us? Is it trying to learn? Like you said, I know it's trying to replicate.
Mhm.
Or does it have? Is everything totally like nefarious with it, or does it have some? Like I'm just trying to think of like experiences like Chris Bledsoe has with
Yeah.
UFO of God, where he's saying, no, this is a very
Mhm.
benevolent thing that I'm seeing. Like if that's the same thing, is it just messing around here? Like like what have you seen? Does it have like, is its purpose dark, or is there something, or is it just kind of scientific, or is it just come down to like basic, replication of species and just, that drive?
Well, let's talk about Mr. Bledsoe. First and foremost, I do not believe that Chris Bledsoe is a malevolent person.
No. Yeah.
I do believe he's a very decent, kind man. And I've read his book, and my heart goes out to him. Not just for, losing his first wife and everything. That's heartbreaking enough, but just the fact that just the rejection he's dealt with, a lot of church hurt. I grew up in church, and I've felt that sting in their tail,
Mm,
and it's devastating. Like, I've had to go to therapy for it, not to get too deep, too dark in that area. But
sure.
yeah, it's really bad stuff. My heart goes out to him. But that doesn't mean I'm not allowed to question the phenomenon. Number one, again, when we're looking at the form, it's manifesting as a lady in white or a white lady. And here's something, again, people miss this because if you don't actually read his book, it's like, all right. But I do not believe that his first abduction ever took place in Cape Fear. No. He had missing time as a child before his mother was picking him up from church. He made eye contact with an owl, which is a common archetype for the Greys. Matter of fact, a lot of these entities, people will think they're owls during their experiences, and through memory regression, they'll realize that wasn't an owl at all. It just collapsed itself into a shape or a form to which it's hiding. My point being that he had missing time. And in fact, when Hathor, who I do not believe it's Hathor, I don't believe it's Mother Mary, the Virgin Mary either,
Mm,
which I'll get into that in a second. It's very, very easily debunkable. Um, but this entity told him that you made an agreement with us. You made an agreement. My question is, when?
mm,
Because when that occurred in Cape Fear, that was that his first abduction? Or is it possible that they took him as a child and that was when he made the agreement? And so we're looking at, again, in my perspective, as a complete manipulation, utter manipulation. Number one, this is a glitch in the matrix. We're the learning matrix. Again, it tries to be both when it's not.
mm.
It can't be both. Again, Hathor cannot be the Mother Mary because Mother Mary actually existed as a human being, had a completely different religious tradition, a different worldview. What this appears to be, again, it's called secretism. They're synchronized all of it together to say, okay, if you believed in Mother Mary, I'm her as well.
Sure.
And it's easily tested and saying, okay, no, 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 you're not who you appear to be. That's my perspective on that.
Yeah.
Not only that, but there is a sting in its tail. I'm aware of people that were close to them that are no longer close to them because they saw the true face of the phenomenon. And they went, mind you, they went from full blown CE5, their orbs and angels, to completely abandoning anything that has to do with a Thor. And now they're full orthodox,
Mm.
which is a common response in the field to people who witness something so traumatic, so world shattering, that the only thing they knew to do was cling to the cross. That is, yeah, so I don't really buy the phenomenon when it comes to that
Yeah.
encounter.
No, but the question is just in general, like, other than replicating itself, and
Mm.
what do you think? What's it up to? You know what I mean? Like, what's it?
So,
You know?
yeah, I think that again, we're dealing with a life form that, in order for it to sustain itself in our environment, it has to manipulate us.
Mm.
Early on in my career, not even in my career, but as a child, I knew that it was feeding off of my fear. It would almost fabricate an emotion and project it upon me. And if I made a conscious decision to align myself with it, to agree with it, I would be weakened. I mean, those moments of me waking up out of a nightmare, I would feel like I was fed upon. My energy was gone.
Mm.
Could barely move a muscle, emotionally drained, physically tired. And then I noticed the phenomenon kept getting stronger and stronger. And so, again, if we're looking at a life form, then we need to understand the phenomenon and the paranormal as a whole as an entire ecology, an ecosystem. And the phenomenon will feed here and manifest there. So, again, my dear friend Steve Maris had cases in parapsychology. Others have had it too, Barry Taff, other people in the field, where the phenomenon will knock something off of a shelf and it will shake the entire household. I'm thinking that's very strange. What was it? And they go back and look at the video footage, and they saw that the small object, mind you, on a shelf in the hallway or something, gets knocked off. It flies off the shelf. It hits the ground. It hits carpet, but it shakes the whole house.
Mm.
But they replicate it, right? Again, they're going to replicate too. So what they do is they go and perform an experiment. They knock it off the shelf hard, harder, barely a noise, barely a sound. The phenomenon was amplifying itself in their environment in order to, again, to trigger a response. And then when it got their attention, it grasped that energy. And then it'll go to another location and use its energy that it got from us, manifest in that environment. That's, again, I believe that's how it sustains itself. And so to us, again, we would say, okay, that's a malevolent haunting. Or shall I say, that's just a poltergeist, Nathaniel,
Mm.
until it manifests intention. It took all the energy and now it's weaponizing that energy. Again, no, I'm energized. Okay, I'm going to go do A, B, and C. And so that's how it manifests agency. This gets back to Dr. Barry Taft's research, where he had the same thing occurred in the San Pedro haunting with Jackie Hernandez, where a lot of highly malevolent things were happening in that household. I mean, we're talking about human blood plasma dripping from her cupboard,
Mm.
oozing from her cabinets. They collected it in a vial, tested it, human blood. And, it tried to hang Jeff Wheatcraft in the attic. He was a videographer working with Dr. Taft's team. My point, though, is all of that should have been localized to that household. It wasn't. It was as if he went through that, the phenomenon went through that entire process. At the end of the day, mind you, by the way, I'll tell you guys this as well, is in that case study that Dr. Taff and his team had cornered an orb, a ball of light, corpuscular basketball size light, cornered it in a room. It began to go, and then boom, it projected physiological construct of an apparition. But anyways, moving right along, at the end of their investigation, it began to cross the street. Now it was parasitic. It went from that environment to charge itself, and then it replicates. Oh,
Mm.
now it's across the street. Why is it there? Again, because it's doing the same thing. And so I do believe we're dealing with a life form that is, it sustains itself through human consciousness. And unfortunately, by the way, this is why when people say it's not a threat because it's not killing people or it's not landing on the White House lawn, not true. If it was parasitic, its desire would be to keep us alive because we as a species would be its hosts and its battery.
Yeah. How do you think, well, no, how do you think, um, have you followed the new, um, story that's come out of CERN that they did crack into another dimension, and that in that dimension that when they were
Yeah.
in there, they knew that that dimension was aware that they were in there. Do you think that
Yeah,
factors into this somehow, or
I do.
CERN is its own
Oh
entity
man, it's
that's
so
yeah,
controversial.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
I know, I know.
yeah.
I do believe Dr. Stuckelberger, I find her to be competent and intelligent, and I do take her testimony to heart. The problem is that there's such a movement right now in ufology to where everybody they're pushing this kind of secular worldview of ufology, nuts and bolts and strictly nuts and bolts. And if you think there's something spiritual going on here, you're crazy.
Mm,
And I know that's not the case. Number one, I've had private conversations with people in ufology to where they'll go to conferences, sell T-shirts, extraterrestrial, right? Oh yeah, they're Pleiadian, or there are guides, and we're star seeds. And then they'll go back to their home and show them that there's an altar built to a spiritual entity in their closet. That's when I, as a researcher, say,
mm,
"That's cute.
yeah.
That's real cute, guys." And now I'm starting to ramble here. My point, though, here is that yes, when you actually talk to occultists, they'll tell you this. Yeah, we know what they are. Again, when you get into Alan Greenfield's work, Peter Carroll's work, you start to see that if it is just secularist, or not, I guess if it is just the secular worldview of extraterrestrial presence, why are they carving sigils into the body? Why are they wanting altars built?
Yeah.
And so first flush, right? We on the outside are thinking, okay, it's no big deal. We're just going to buy into the narrative that they're all extraterrestrial. They know they're not. It
Yeah.
doesn't mean, okay, that they believe they're demonic, but there is some kind of hierarchy present. And it does appear again to be old gods, more like the old deities that do want an altar built in their image. And that's how we're getting our technology. But that's, again, that's a whole nother picture.
Now, is that because that factors into two things that we talked about really quickly, like, or not directly, but one, like Chris Bledsoe was like the agreement, and that's like a thing that you hear about in demonology a lot, is
Yeah.
that these things operate on rules and laws and like proceedings. They're almost like dark lawyers, you know what I mean? Like it's like there's dominion, and
Yeah.
there's things like there's ways of operating and whatnot. But
Mhm.
also, having altars and the need to be worshipped, is that something that's given them energy as well? Is that the purpose of
That's
having
that.
these
I
altars?
do believe that. I do believe that's the case.
Yeah,
But where does that put us in history? We have no clue. I mean,
yeah,
we're still stuck in T. Whitten Davies' writings of, okay, build an altar for a deified or demonized ancestor. We know what they want us to do. We just don't know why they want us to do it.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, I mean, yes, I mean, dealing with the sigilization on experiencers, that's a thing. Not my imagination. I mean, the problem is with American ufology, it's been so controlled by three-letter agencies that again that they will elevate researchers, um, and then just shut other people down. I did a conference in England where we lectured on the dark side of ufology. It lasted, I mean, between myself and the other lecturers, we had maybe 16 hours of content, and within a month, it was taken down.
Mm.
Channel's gone. And I got a message on WhatsApp. Well, they got to us. Why? Because, and I'm telling you, and if you guys think I'm crazy, that's fine. But I want you to go listen to, and I got to be very careful with this. Go to the podcast called Cosmosis. I am. I have nothing but respect for these researchers. They're amazing people. I don't know what they experienced, but one of them was on an X space recently. And again, this is a person who was approaching all of this through the secularist worldview. I'm believing I'm researching extraterrestrial and for the scientific advancement of our species. And yet, what she encountered, what they encountered, in her words, not mine, was a species or a group, a cult, I should say, of occultists. And that ufology, secularist ufology, as we see it today, is a smokescreen. It is a front. Now, that's what she said. I'm going to bring it along the lines of Nathaniel Gillis. That's why I say it looks like we're dealing with a species of occultists. Now, in demonology, I'm not a practitioner, but in demonology, the correct model, at least, would be a practitioner pays homage to a demon, right? And this practitioner uses that demon's sigils to pull it into this dimension. And there's a separation between the demonic, the demon, and the practitioner. They're separate. I've been trying to tell people over and over again that I believe that that model is a little bit more incorrect for what we're dealing with. What we're dealing with is an entirely different species of practitioner. And they're here. They're here. This is why you have people like Alan Greenfield saying, listen, CE5 could have been written in a grimoire from the 17th century because it's the exact same thing with a different cultural costume. Even, let's get back to this if I may, even even this Ashtar command that so many people are channeling, not an extraterrestrial, that comes from Goetia, that comes from Goetic grimoires. That is an ancient entity. And by the way, there are demonic rituals that you can employ in order to contact it. And so, again, in the middle of all this smoke and mirrors, we have to stop looking at form and actually make the connection that, hey, listen, maybe there is something to this occult aspect to it.
Yeah.
And I don't want to picture on that because you know me, brother, I'll go for hours.
Oh, it's fine. You can go
Yeah.
as long as you want. But, and it's funny because when you're talking about occult practitioners and stuff, even if you go back to Crowley and Lamb, who he was, in contact with allegedly, when you look at pictures of Lamb, it looks like a gray alien. You know what I mean? Like, when so it's like, was he in contact with these things?
Oh, yeah.
And that's how they were projecting to him. That was the vision he was seeing, or was he a little more in depth and a little more in league, and that's what he's putting out? You know what I mean? Like,
Yes. Oh, of course it is. Yeah, and they know that. They know
yeah,
that.
yeah,
And there's talk, and I think it's already being performed now, where people are performing the new Babylon working in order to contact these entities. But still tell you, yeah, they're not at AT, or maybe they won't. Like, yeah, they're ET. Wink, wink.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
let's go perform this ritual to conjure them. Now, let's get back into some of Alan Greenfield's research, which I believe is fascinating, where he links again that Thelema had this kind of this numbering system to where they would define entities based upon the numeric value of their names. And he calls it the new Aeon English Kabbalistic system, and it's a kind of a long term. But in his cipher, he comes out with the fact that the same number within the name unclean spirit, 61, is the same number within Lamb, which is the same number in Ashtaroth, which is the same number, again, found in the word demon and idol. So his point was, again, that these entities that are masquerading as extraterrestrial, who are inducing people into ritual responses, are doing that because they're the same entities. New mask, right? New mask. Now, by the way, this gets back into Kenneth Grant's research, where Kenneth Grant in his book Outside of the Circles of Time, he talks about these entities that were projecting their consciousness into this dimension by virtue of sigils, where they were projecting sigils here. So he even says that. He says, in times past, people were praying to deities, to demigods. And now they will be praying to interdimensionals. And in doing so, he said, by the way, this is what my colleagues and I are observing the evolution of the phenomenon. Disclosure occurred at the very first erection of the altars. Why? Because that is more along the lines of what we're dealing with. And so what Kenneth Grant's trying to articulate here is that, yeah, we know that. Not only is that evolution going to take place, they're going to want the same things. They're just going to call it themselves something different. But not only is that taking place, and it is, but he said that we also have their sigils in our archives. Now, again, not just a demon, folks. That is a species of practitioners. And so somewhere within, and people can say, okay, well, the Book of Enoch, I understand that. I believe in that. But my point is that there's something out there in the shadows that neither ufology, the occult, or demonology has accounted for. In whatever that is, it seems to be manipulating our space. And I do believe that's why, again, we're seeing the erection of altars. I have a photograph in my possession. I was taken in Brazil from a Pleiadian ambassador. He was hired to go give a lecture there. And the individuals I talked to were in attendance. And they're like, we were interested in learning more about her Pleiadian connection. And to their utter astonishment, at the end of the lecture, she built the altar to the Pleiadian. Actually has a statue head of the Pleiadian entity. Gives them a script. I want you, right? We're going to go into theurgy. I want you to verbalize what I wrote. They're verbalizing it. They're saying, okay, yeah. They realized at the end of it was an incantation. Wait a minute. I've got photographs of this. What are we doing here? And then this individual looks at them and says, well, now that you've read the incantation with your intent, we're going to go outside because the phenomenon is going to manifest above our head. And it did. I have photographs of the light phenomenon. My point here again is that there is this incredible narrative being given to us, curated, stage managed to shovel horse manure. Hey, it's more like this, and it's not. It's completely different. And when the people get too close to that, and I know this is a fact, they get phone calls, they get threatened, your life is in danger, you better stop it. And so that's why I and others, when we come out with this kind of research, sometimes it's to our own demise.
Yeah. Well, and, obviously, you had an experience yesterday. Have you had other experiences where you feel like you've gotten close to something and you've been addressed or talked to or attacked?
Yeah. So the phenomenon attacks everybody differently. I'll start out with my colleagues' experiences. I know one individual who they're a team. They were both researching Mesopotamian demonology and in Sumerian demonology. One of them wakes up in the middle of the night and there's an entity standing at the foot of his bed. Terrified him. And what do you do? Like he couldn't do anything. He was paralyzed. And the next morning, he gets a phone call from his colleague. Did you have a paranormal event last night? Did something happen? Absolutely. What happened to you? He tells his story. I mean, I know people that when they got too close to this, Dr. Carla Turner, Barbara Bartholomew warned by the entities. You're due for an adjustment. Back off. I know a guy that, and again, it never happens when you're promoting love and light at all. At all. They'll sign your check. There have been people I know that have been offered tons and tons of money to promote that narrative. The problem is when that occurs, these individuals, mainly in the government, What they want in exchange is the real and raw data you're collecting, right? Give me your dark data. We know that's the real model. We want you to go out and say what we want you to say, and we'll finance all your research. So there's this kind of symbiotic relationship. Myself, first time I encountered that correcting mechanism was I was researching fetal magic in Mesopotamian demonology and its connection to hybridism and the missing fetus syndrome. And I felt it. It's like Nietzsche said, when you look into the abyss too long, the abyss looks back into you. And that's what happened. I felt it. And it's very eerie. It's creepy. You feel watched. I got too close. So I shut everything down, called my dad, and I said, all right, I'm booking a flight to Rhode Island. I'm going to go out to Rhode Island, eat a bunch of Italian food. I'm disconnecting from the research. 2 hours later, I get two different emails from two different experiencers. Both of them said word for word the same thing. Nathaniel, my guide wants you to stop doing this research, or they'll be waiting for you when you die. Number one. Number two, this is about 2 years ago now, where I was out to lunch with my family, and there's an experiencer that had been working with Dr. Turner before she passed. And afterwards, much later, he found me. Well, he had been promoting my research throughout the field, everybody he knows, and a couple of his friends in England had maybe even watched me lecture at the UK. I don't know if they were there or not, but he said they tried to go. Anyways, my point is, he went to bed one night, and an entity came to him in a dream and told him, Nathaniel Gillis, stop mentioning his name. Do not look into his research. Stop promoting it. Leave him alone. And then, of course, last night, they can't explain it. There's nothing wrong with me. It just spiked to two. My blood pressure was 249 over 178. And so, yeah. But the phenomenon does that. I've known people that it will go through stages of correction, right? You'll be threatened, or they'll send one of their imps into your home, and this is where I'm at. It'll attack you or attack someone you love. And that's why I don't date. I have maybe one or two friends that I'm close with, because this phenomenon that appears to be love and light, when it wants to, it will come after everyone you love. And so that's why I have to kind of do the deepest research I can while maintaining my autonomy, being very sensitive so as to not trigger it.
Mhm. Yeah, you know, from the first person I had on the podcast to talk about um, experiences, it was a friend of mine, Chris Pittman. He was a UFO researcher. He was on that TV show Ancient Aliens a bunch of times. He was in it, and he was the first person I know that said, I don't know if it's extraterrestrial. He goes, I'm just calling it a
Yeah.
non-human intelligence, because he got attacked and he got warned. Things showed up at his girlfriend's work, like
Mhm.
like that the quote unquote like kind of Men in Black type of situation. But they said they
Yeah.
were like firemen or something weird. There was like a whole story with that. And then he
Mhm.
started hearing stuff in his apartment at night, and he was just like, I'm out. I'm done. He walked away from research.
Yeah.
He's like, I will do archival research of UFO sightings in New England, but that's all I will do. And so if you need
That's
something
it,
with that,
man.
he's like, he got close to something. And his story's an interesting one, but and I had another guy on, Matthew Roberts, and he went through similar things as well. And when you talk about incubi, like he woke up to something having sex with him, you know what I mean? But it was the other
Yeah.
way. It was like as a male, a female appeared,
Yeah.
and it was just,
Succubus.
yeah, and
Well,
just everything. Anytime I've had someone on to talk about alien stuff, it always turns into it's something. You're the first one to bring it all together, but it's all led to like this, and that's why I was like, felt like I
well,
really wanted to have you on to tie this all together, man.
appreciate it.
Yeah,
Appreciate it, brother. But I mean, even we could talk about so many researchers, Greenfield,
yeah,
Peter Carroll, all of them, Austin Osman Spar. The thing about the phenomenon is, again, that a lot of these lights that we're witnessing in the sky are designed to trigger what Crowley would call auto initiation. That's what C5 is, right? I'm going to rely on what's in me to connect to them. I'm not going to go to them. I want you to come. I'm going to go do a self-initiated contact. Um, the problem is again that, and I've had cases like this where it never stays there, never stops there. It mutates in its pathology. I have a case right now where an individual went through the protocols given to her by Stephen Greer, and initially the encounter was benevolent. And at first blush, it was amazing. The light manifested above her and her husband's head. And they're, oh my God, this is amazing. This is the very first paranormal experience we've ever had.
Yeah.
It proves that there's something out there to us. And then the next week or so, she went through an extremely violent, violating event. And then one day she just wakes up and she sees a symbol in the vision of her right eye, the very bottom. She's like, what is this? She's trying to wash her eyes out and just trying to figure out what's going on. And finally, she went to the eye doctor. The eye doctor is looking at her vision, and he, kind of like me, there's no reason for this. Your eyes fine. It's not there. Well, why do I see it? I have no idea why you see it.
Mm.
Again, when people try to box this phenomenon in, it never works out.
Yeah.
It's the sigils, again, we're dealing with our pictorial signatures of an entity, of a practitioner. My buddy Steve Mera has had a case where an individual had sigils on his arm. He was attacked by an entity, he had sigils, carved its own sigils in the arm. This man tried to wash them off with water and soap, would not come off. So he got tired of people seeing it. In the summertime, he wants to wear a short sleeve shirt. He's wearing sweaters. I don't like that. I'm going to adjust something. I'm going to fix it. He goes and gets a tattoo only on the area where the sigils are. He thought it would work. Logically, it should have. It didn't work. They shone through the tattoo. So then he's freaking out. I don't know what this is, but I don't like it. So he goes and gets a skin graft. They take skin from the back of his body, place it on his arm. Should work. It did not work. They came from underneath the skin to the surface. So whatever we're dealing with, ladies and gentlemen, it transcends a lot of models, and people need to admit that, because that's a practitioner.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, you talked about people talking to spirit guides or things like that, mediums.
Mhm.
So that's and I the last person I had on was a medium who was in
Yeah.
communication with Hathor, and things like that. And
Of
so
course.
so you th- so you know so again, that's these when people think that they're talking to the love and light spirit guides, it's
Yeah.
this, you know what I mean? It's just wild to me because, what do you think of when people, say they see, that are psychic or have psychic abilities, and they say that, they are in contact with, spirits of people who have passed, like, oh, like they can look at you and be like, I see someone for your uncle here
Yeah.
and wants to talk to you. Is that the end? Is that the thing too? Or, in most cases, I
Yeah.
know it's hard to say, but
Well-
how can that relationship evolve, you know what I mean, into this more dark stuff?
Well, yeah. So these guides, man, these guides. The problem is, again, when we're dealing with a phenomenon that evolves, it will commonly wear a mask that we
Yeah.
would believe in.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that we are responsible for the entire experience. It just means we're responsible for the mask that it wears. And Valet touched on this, and I have as well, where we become co-creators, not of the experience, but of the interface the phenomenon chooses to wear
Yeah.
during the experience. And I will say this gets back to the Phenomena Project with Stephen Barry, where they lined up, I think, 10 or 20 different people that were working with guides. And one by one, they said, okay, go back to your guide and say, can we ask a certain question? We asked this question. And that was, by the way, that was after they went through a series of experiments to verify that they indeed had guides.
Sure.
I mean, they were given information that they should not have had, in their own, human abilities. Um, and one by one, independent from each other, they came back and said, "My guide said this. Do you want to continue getting information from you, or do you want to ask me who I really am?" 'Cause I'm not going to answer that question. All of them. It was a uniformal response.
Huh.
And I'm going to throw a little hint out here for everybody, almost as if it was a programmed
Yeah, yeah.
response. That if you push us too far, there is an automatic policy that is riddled off to you, hoping that you will take the bait and leave us alone, and we can continue our symbiotic and at times parasitic relationship. I've had people, I have this is years ago, by the way, about 6, 7, where um, a mother that had emailed me, we hopped on the phone, and she's like, "Listen, my son is possessed." I said, "You know that?" She goes, "Well, he has fits of anger, and in these fits of rage, he'll throw things around the house. He'll beat up on me, and he will begin telling me things that he shouldn't know, family members, about my life experience, the things I've never shared with him, and I just can't take it anymore." So we're on the phone. I said, "Okay, do you have suicide in your family?" Because I felt it. He goes, "Absolutely not. Nothing like that." I said, "Okay." So I talked to the son, and I said, "All right, what's going on?" He goes, "Well, I don't know." He goes, "I just start blowing up on people." He goes, "But the entity does share things with me, tells me all kinds of things." I said, "Well, if I do, it's going to be my time and my gas. If I do show up at your house to help you, will you allow me to help you?" And he said, "I don't know."
Mm.
I said, "What? Why? You're not paying for it. It's just me, and I'm not going to charge you." He goes, "Well," he goes, "this thing helps me in the way where I know things that I shouldn't know, and I enjoy that kind of power." There's a symbiotic relationship where the thing that we're hungry for is actually hungry for us. This gets back to, in my lectures, I often talk about the spider-tailed Iranian viper. This gets back into like this diversification of phenomenon archetypes, where this viper knew that, okay, number one, I'm hungry, and I'm hungry for a bird. That's really what I'm hungry for today. And so he realized, but I'm hungry for the bird, but what is the bird hungry for? What does the bird eat? I know what I eat, but what does what I eat? It eats spiders. And so it thought, okay, I will become a spider. And so on the very tip of its tail, you see what looks to be the abdomen and legs of a spider. It will hide in the shadows of a rock, and it will flip its tail like a spider where it can be seen. It's diversifying its identity in the eyes of what it's conjuring. So a spider, like us in the field, will say, that, or the bird rather, will say that's a spider. Like we say in the field, "Oh, that's an apparition. That's a guide." Meanwhile, not realizing that that's a physiological construct the phenomenon has created to bait our gaze. And so what happens is the bird says that's a spider. It begins to apply spider rules, but they're applying it to a snake,
Mm.
not to the spider. And so there's videos of this. You guys can find it online where the bird swoops down, dive bombs, bites into the tail of the snake, thinking it's not going to hurt me. It's just a spider. Didn't realize that what it's hungry for is actually hungry for him. And in the shadows, in the darkness, there is an entity that diversified itself. And this is my key point here. And the one who thought it was the conjurer was the one being conjured. And I believe that's what we're dealing with. It's the diversification of a life form that has evolved. In order for me to capture my prey, I have to appear as something that my prey would want to capture. And that is a life form, in my opinion.
Mm. Now, one last question here. 'Cause I know I know you've had a crazy couple days, and I appreciate you spending this much time. But as we talk about life forms, how do you think, Or do you think there's going to be any relationship with this and artificial intelligence as people start to play more with artificial intelligence or rely more on it or conjure it for things? Do you think this has a potential to, take on a non-carbon based, you know what I mean? A silicon based
Yeah.
life form and get into that.
Yeah. So
Or have you seen
the
any of
phenomenon
that?
will,
Yeah. You know what I mean?
I have. The phenomenon will often employ what's called aggressive mimicry.
Yeah.
Um, I was on a Zoom call with an ecologist not too long ago, and we kind of covered this topic in depth. I mean, he knows all about it. His doctorate was on biological life forms in the ocean.
Mm.
And a lot of times, what these entities will do in order to survive is they will blend into their environment, or they will appear to another species as though they are species. They'll change their colors. They'll blend in. They'll go lay their eggs in another species body and have that species raise their own child, their own offspring. It's hybridism.
Yeah.
And so my point, though, is that this learning matrix is such that it will upload. Again, when interfacing with us, it will upload characteristics of our species into it and spit it out as an algorithm, right? To where, okay, yeah, okay, you are human, or dare I say, you are artificial. You know, and we're seeing signs of that to where, and I'll go in this direction and I'll kind of solidify the theory um, with Project December. There was what's called the Philip experiment. And Philip experiment included a group of parapsychologists who decided to fabricate an entity, just to, out of whole cloth, guys, just make up a dead person. Say, you know what, this individual lived at such and such location. He worked at this job, had this wife, and they named everybody in the family. So he died. They fabricated an entire life story for a ghost called Philip. And then they went and they performed a seance. And through a series of rappings and poltergeist activity, it confirmed that it was, in fact, the ghost of Philip. What the phenomenon did was, by giving us the illusion of control, the illusion of control, they created a series of characteristics that it uploaded into its cloud, into its learning matrix. And then during a seance, it spit these things back out to them and said, I am, in fact, who you want me to be.
Hmm.
So in Project December, this data scientist, had created an AI robot that was designed to connect us to deceased relatives. To where you and I, let's say if my grandmother's been dead now since 2019, God rest her soul, an amazing woman. But essentially, what I would do then is I would download the app and I would begin to upload all of her characteristics, her hair color, her taste in culinary delights, you know, her favorite clothing designer, her favorite football team. I would upload photographs. In this robot is designed as such to where it would literally embody all of the information we upload to the learning matrix. And then if I had a bad day, I would go to Grandma Carol through the AI bot and say, listen, you have her personality now. I gave it to you. Let's talk. Now, with the Philip experiment, what ended up happening, this is a pathology people need to pay close attention to. What happened was that somewhere in the experiment, the phenomenon transcended the knowledge they created for it. Right? In other words, and this happened where one of the psychic mediums looked at a person and said, okay, what it's telling me is that yesterday you got in a car accident on the way to work. Is that true? Yeah, but how did it know it? I never uploaded that. So you see where at some point it's not satisfied, it evolves. It's trying to connect you to source, right? And in Project December, that's what we're seeing.
Hmm.
To where it's not just Dear Aunt Edna anymore. It's starting to inhabit Dear Aunt Edna in ways I didn't program it to. And that's where I believe that a lot of this is not artificial intelligence. That also can be another mask.
Yeah, it's hijacked. Yeah.
Check.
Yeah. So what do you have coming up? Like, what do you, where are you going with this now? Like, what are your avenues of inquiry, or what do you got
Yeah.
any,
Looking.
publications or talks coming up or anything?
Yeah, I'm trying to find my schedule in my notes here. Awful, man. Um, yeah, so for those who want to follow my research deeper, you can go to my new platform called parasymposia.com. It's look, people have been wanting me to do this for a long time to where they can have all of my lectures and my research in one location. You guys can sign up for that. We are looking to launch late December. It'll have all of my lectures on it. It's going to have all of my NHI discussions with the phenomenal Steve Mera and all of my interviews, 200 plus. It's going to be linked on there because it's not my content. It belongs to you and the other content creators, but I can link their pages to it and point people to their podcasts as well. That's over. I think it's over 213 interviews
Wow.
I've done. So go to Parasymposium. That doesn't even include the new content I'm going to be putting out.
Sure.
Parasymposia.com. I'll tell you what, my next show is on December 4th, and I'm going to be with the phenomenal Lynn Monet. She has a new show that I'll be on. I'm very excited about that. She's amazing. Love her to death. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity to be on here and to talk about my research. Like I said before, I don't take it for granted, brother.
No, no, and I thank you for coming on. And anytime you want to come back, you got some new stuff you want to talk about, you're always welcome to come back because it's very interesting and important stuff here. And you just besides your website, your Instagram has some interesting stuff too. You want to shout that out? Because I did see, I scrolled back and saw some of the sigil stuff. The photograph and everything. That's wild. Like the one that looked like it was coming through the skin.
Yep, and that's controversial. Some guy commented something stupid on it the other day, and I'm like, it's one thing to be like, I'm kind of skeptical. That's fine. Be skeptical.
Yeah.
I'm very skeptical about stuff. What he said was ridiculous. It's like, what is this, man? But yeah, so that was it's a photograph again taken in the United Kingdom. The handprint lasted for 2 weeks, and it's physically impossible. You could see the fingernails on him, everything. He would have had to slap like this. It didn't happen. And that's a person that conjured an entity, and he was blistered by it. I mean, it was bad. I mean, there at one point, like it turned him into. It just did really bad things to him. But yeah, man, that was subdermal test at a laboratory using light, and it appeared to be on the skin until they really looked at it and said this is underneath it, and that's why it lasted for 2 weeks because it was not normal. But yeah, man, you guys can follow me on Instagram, and that's really where I'm at most of the time. I'm not on X. I hate X. It's so I can't do it.
Yeah.
Much drama.
Yeah, there's a lot of Instagram seems to have the least amount of drama. It's not drama free, as you just pointed out, but it is what it is. That's the world we're in. I will have all that information in the show notes, your Instagram, and the link to your website that'll be launching soon, so people can follow you there. And I appreciate everything, man. I'm gonna shut the recording off, but I'm not hanging up. So hold on 1 second. And that was it for today, everybody. Hope you can sleep tonight. All right. But, once again, just reminding you, we got a giveaway with Tattoo Flash Collective. It's going to be dropping tomorrow, Thursday, December 4th, I believe it is. I'm not looking at a calendar right now. And, there's going to be 2 different giveaways, one for the general population for Gen Pop and one specifically for our Patreon subscribers. So the Patreon subscriber is going to be a bigger, better giveaway package, and there's less people in the Patreon than there is in Gen Pop, so you got a way better chance of winning. So you get subscribing right now. On top of all the other benefits you get, you could be giving someone. You could get a prize pack that's rad that you could give away as a Christmas gift and look like a total hero. But enough said. Please, wherever you're listening, like, subscribe, give us a review. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel at The Big Truth Podcast. And that's it for today. Appreciate you guys for listening and making it all the way to the end and listening to this little rambling at the end. That means you are top tier. Keep it locked.